All right. So I think this conversation matters for us as developers, and then for the companies, and also for the IT industry as a whole. So as developers, we really like to be productive, or at least we like to think that we are productive. And most of the times we are productive thanks to our tools. There are cases when we are productive despite our tools, but that's something you don't want to really feel. So you can see that there's a lot to consider here. And if you add on top all the intrusive thoughts of how do I stay relevant for the market, or how do I grab most of the opportunities that I can get, you will see that a lot of the answers to these questions boil down to technology. And as companies, I would like to, the main question is, how do I keep my developers happy, and at what cost? And it's not only about the money, it's about all the effort that you need to spend to really make sure that you can offer the best resources to your developers, you can retain the best talent you can get, and so on. Again, this gets us to technology. And for the IT industry as a whole, I think Java and Kotlin have set an unprecedented standard for interoperability. So that's what I see that will happen also from tomorrow and onwards. So that's the future. So this is why this conversation is also relevant. OK. So the famous write once, run anywhere screen appeared before our eyes in 1996, which is 1 year before I was born, and it's also before some of you were born. So that's a long time ago. And then only 20 years later, Kotlin appeared, and it came to address many of the technical limitations that Java had at that time. So a lot has changed since then. There are many features which were added into Kotlin. And then coming back towards the present day, Java has fought back and tried to add many new features. Some features that are in Kotlin might never be in Java. That is because the way Java was originally built, and also because having such a large adoption means you cannot introduce big changes without breaking stuff. So it's a lot to think about. But there are many new features in Java as well. Maybe some are not so cool, right? If your grandmother or your grandfather uses TikTok, it's nice that she tries to be on top of the trends, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a bit embarrassing. So that's also true for some Java features, right? Why do I have to call stream on a collection if it's already clear what I'm about to do? But this is where we are today. If you haven't seen this, this is the TOB Programming Community Index, which tries to measure programming language popularity based on the number of employees that work with it, courses, and everything else that's online. I've highlighted Java here because it's still one of the top programming languages. Actually, I think maybe you cannot see it very well, but it's there, it's on the top. For sure, you cannot see Kotlin yet, because as of June 2024, it was only P19, but it's showing good growth. And if I move here, you will see a different picture. So you will see the Google Trends and also the Stack Overflow questions, which are tagged with Java and Kotlin. You'll see basically the same picture, right? Java interest is slowly declining. Kotlin interest is slowly increasing, maybe at the same rate. And then for Stack Overflow, it's true. So there is some growth. And now I can move to the actual comparison. So I would like to make a small survey. So who here is a Java developer and uses Java for their day-to-day job? All right, thank you very much. And now, who here uses Kotlin for their day-to-day job? All right. And who uses both, maybe? By the way, this is what I will do for the entire 30 minutes. I will just ask questions. But thank you very much for the survey, because of that, I can already know that maybe you already know some of these differences. And actually, this could be like a full-day workshop where we analyze all the differences. I've just listed a few here. The most important from my point of view: the syntax, the null safety, the type inference, and the functional programming aspects. But that's not the main purpose of this slide. I have an idea which I think is actually more important. So when people compare Kotlin and Java and maybe say that Kotlin looks nicer, they sometimes unmistakably compare it with Java 7. And the current Java version is actually Java 22. So a lot of things have also been added to Java to make up for these differences. So it's now entirely possible that you see a snippet of code. It's in Java, but you might mistakenly think it's in Kotlin if you don't look at the file extension. But that's totally possible today. But Kotlin is indeed more expressive, right? You have you can write this, two developers can write the same piece of code in two totally different ways. That's a double-edged sword, because you know that you now and you in 6 months are two totally different programmers, so then it might be difficult to understand what you wanted to write. They call it syntactic sugar, of course, and too much sugar is almost always bad. Okay, so I would also like to highlight one important aspect here. If you're a developer and you've looked on the job market, you might see that some jobs have appeared which are only titled backend engineer, right? No mention of the Java language or Kotlin or Python or Go or whatever. So there's this mindset towards which some companies are shifting that, hey, take a good backend engineer, and if they want to do so, and if they have all the resources that they need, and if you guide them, they might be able to switch comfortably to another programming language. That's to some extent the path I was on. So I started in university as a PHP developer. I moved to C#, I moved to Java. I moved to being a full stack developer, and then I went back to Java and Kotlin. And this made me a better developer from my point of view. It made me understand things much faster. I would like to think about myself that I was smart and I took these strategic decisions, hey, learn this and that. But in reality, I was not. I was just very curious, but I recommend this curiosity for you too. At Deloitte, we are tinkering a little bit with this option, but we are not really forcing it. But we have this kind of conversation, hey, if you'd like to learn something new, we can support you with everything. We can give you all the resources, and then it's up to you if you like to switch or not. All right, I said in the beginning that Java and Kotlin are like two siblings that grew together. And what do siblings do? They borrow stuff from each other, right? So that's what Java and Kotlin did. I'm not even mentioning the IDE support, but what's even more important is all the frameworks and libraries that are shared between the two. And we are very lucky to have this kind of features and this kind of interoperability, because it's really nice and it moves us forward. And also the big community overlap between the two languages, right? It's very often that I search for an issue on Kotlin and I find it on a Java question on Stack Overflow, which is really nice, and I feel very lucky about that. All right, these next two sections might become a little bit more technical. If you don't like it when stuff gets technical, then I promise not to stay as much on this. If you're here for the technical part, I'll stay a lot. I want to talk a little bit about the performance. So if I want to compare the performance of the two programming languages, I need to consider runtime performance, and then I also need to consider the development speed. So for runtime performance, I said I consider execution speed and memory usage. But here's the thing. I looked at all the available research I could find online. I even tried to do my own. From everything that I could find, there's nothing that can significantly put Java above Kotlin or Kotlin above Java. The reason is very basic, and you can see it in the diagram, because both languages use the JVM, so there's only so much you can do about optimizing. Of course, there are some corner cases where maybe one language is faster than the other, but from my point of view, there's nothing that can move you to one of the two languages. So then I can think about development speed, right? So the ease of coding, and then debugging, and maybe the compilation times. But here's the challenge, because these are subjective measures for the most part. the compilation maybe still stays objective. But then what does this mean? That there are some developers who move faster with Java. There are some developers who move faster with Kotlin. Although there was this joke I read that Kotlin devs are less productive than Java because of all the time they spend talking about how much better Kotlin is. But other than that, yeah, it's natural that you feel more, that you move faster with your preferred language. And I think that's really important for us as developers to have this luxury of choosing our own tools and what we think works best for our job. And besides of that, we also have this perspective here from Steve McConnell that the bigger the project is, the less time you spend on actual coding, and then the more time you spend on all the other stuff that is architecture or integration or system testing, right? The bigger the picture is, the more time we have to spend on looking at it. And then it's important that we do it with the tools that feel more natural to us, and we have this liberty to be creative, right? So like I said, I would like myself to be productive thanks to the tools that I use, not despite of them, so that's really important stuff. Actually, between the time when I wrote the notes for this talk and today, Kotlin K2 compiler was released. They promise an improved performance in compilation times. I haven't got the chance to test with it, so I can't say anything about it yet. But I'm just saying that maybe a little part of this might not be true very soon, but that's why these times are exciting. OK. Maybe it's time to talk a little bit about the interoperability of the two languages. So you can definitely call Java from Kotlin. You can definitely call Kotlin from Java. There are many rules and restrictions and possibility to do so. But what's important thing is that you have this kind of advantage, right? So you can have a mixed code base where you use both Java and Kotlin. I think it's maybe in some cases a very good idea. There are people who write the most sensitive part of the code in the language that they prefer, let's say Kotlin, and then they put a Java API wrapper on top of it. And that's also a good idea, so maybe try it. So I wanted once to start working on a feature that involved me touching two microservices. One was written in Java, the other one was written in Kotlin. No, half Kotlin, half Java. So if you're developers, you know that sometimes you have this kind of urge to rewrite some of the stuff before actually working on the feature. So I would like to ask you, what do you think I did? Nothing. I just put the ticket back on the board, and then I took another one, because there are many things to consider if you really want to migrate one code base from one language to another. So you can notice how there's a lot of weight on the planning part, and I think that's the healthiest way of doing it. Think about testing, if you really need to increase your testing coverage so that you can make sure that you have a successful migration. Think of your performance benchmarks. Given what I said until now, there might not be too many differences, but it's better to check twice than regret once. So I think that you need to spend a lot of time on the planning side, and then you can start with a POC or a pilot, right? Then migrate the services one by one. But before you do that, please be sure that all the developers in the team are actually on board with this migration. And on board means that they have the will and they have the skill. So you need to ensure that they have all the resources. And then you start service by service and you do the migration. And at the end, if it all is successful, maybe you also update your documentation. You actually should update your documentation. So be sure to do that and then share the knowledge that we do here. So there are also many things to think about which are actually beyond development. So if you have this question, shall I choose Java or shall I choose Kotlin? Or if you have this question, shall I choose this language or the other language? Maybe think beyond development for a little bit. Maybe think more. Because you can see there are many things here, like the project requirements, the expertise, your team's expertise, the community, all the stuff, the training and the learning curve. There are many things to consider. So if you are in this kind of situation when you need to think about a lot of stuff, so then you can arrive in this situation where the company's objectives might not exactly overlap with the developer's objectives, right? I forget about Java and Kotlin. Let's say I'm really passionate about my programming language, but I'm not exactly sure, exactly aware about what's happening on the market. Is my language becoming obsolete? Is it less and less used? I don't know that, maybe. But then my company is aware about all the stuff because they have to look at the trends. So then here's the gap, right? I want to keep working on this. Maybe it would be a good idea to work on something else. So how do you mitigate this? And I think if you really are a people-first company, then you need to go into this sort of companionship relationship where you really need to discuss about all the stuff. Hey, maybe you should also consider this option. Here's why. Here's the data. Do you want to go with it? So then I can give you the resources. I can give you the time. I can help you find the opportunities. It's important that you only wish to do so, and then we can spend this effort together, right? So then you build number 6 on this slide, right? The tailored learning path, which involves continuous mentorship, continuous learning, and I think this is the way to move forward. It's part of my job to do this. It's not always an easy job, but I think this is the safest way to move into the future, where we will actually also go with these slides. So this is what I see the future would look like. So I've managed to talk for 22 minutes without saying AI once, but I think it's here with us. So I think we should really consider that we have so many tools available today for our jobs. Some are good, some are bad, or at least they don't help us. So it's really important to stay adaptive as much as possible, try to be as versatile as possible, flexible, because you never know what you need to learn next, so just keep your ears open, right? Maybe multi-tool proficiency is the thing for tomorrow. I for sure think it is. Maybe you think the same or not. But I think that's where we're going towards, right? So there are many tools, and you can end up having choice paralysis, right? What do I choose next? Do I need to invest some time into this new tool or not? Do I need to invest time in learning Kotlin or not? It's a good question. So I have this simple recipe that I use myself. So it has 3 simple steps. First thing is just have your ears open to learn about all the new stuff that is there, but just don't commit to it yet. Play with it for a little bit, give it some time, see if you can gather the proof that it actually helps you do your job better or faster or nicer. And then if you have this data, then maybe commit to you actually using it or try to bring it to your team and see if other people think the same. Right? So in other words, if you're not sure if you should switch to another tool, maybe you shouldn't yet, right? Wait for the proof. So the reason I chose this topic for this talk was that the developer I've been talking about so far, the one with all the questions, am I still relevant? Can I grab all the opportunities that are in front of me? That developer was actually me. I've always had these questions, and because of the role that I have, I'm actually supposed to also have the answers for these questions. So that's not always easy. So that's why I decided to share this example with you of an example of a setup where we use Java and Kotlin. We have this kind of simple, straightforward project. And we have Java services, and we have Kotlin services. How do you get this kind of project and you turn it into a successful project? So I've chosen 3 pillars that I saw that work for us. One is the culture of growth, right, where you support both breadth and depth of knowledge. Right? You encourage versatility, you allow people to be curious, but you also value your specialization or your specialized team members, and you equip them with all that you can so that they can have all the resources that they need to be good mentors for the rest of the team, and then they can grow together. Then you have to think about the strategic deployment, whether you're building full-featured teams or you're just adding new team members to already existing teams. Maybe one principle that has worked for us, and maybe it can also work for you, is having this type of single responsibility principle where one team is maybe responsible for 1 or 2 or 3 services at the most, right? They can, of course, touch all the other services, but make sure that they are responsible for their own services and they have everything that they need to be able to carry on with this responsibility. And then make sure that in all this time, the training and the development processes are working perfectly, and then you have maybe Java-based training plans, have Kotlin-based training plans, maybe have mixed, right? So that all the people from the company, they can follow them and can grow continuously, right? It sounds easier than it actually is. But maybe also in the kitchen, the great foods have simple recipes as long as you stick to them. So maybe it's a good idea to try to stick with such a plan, right? So if I were to choose some of the key final thoughts that I have after this talk, so the conversation about the latest technology trends will never end. So maybe just stay open and try to hear about everything that's new. If we are talking only about the Java and Kotlin space, I think we're seeing a synergy and we're not seeing a competition, or is a healthy competition at the most. So, but I think this holistic approach is the way to go, and we will see more and more in the future tools that can, or languages or tools that can collaborate together and have mixed communities where everybody grows at kind of the same time. If you need to choose between one language to another and you need to migrate, the plan will be difficult for me to say, but it is actually easy to follow. So it will be plan extensively, execute iteratively, monitor continuously. So I think that's the plan. As developers, we are picky about the tools that we use. If you work with developers, try to make sure that you give them enough space to be comfortably choosing their tools so that they can do the jobs to the very best of their abilities, right, and their creativity. And also look beyond development if you're trying to choose the best tool, because I think you'll find many answers there if you ask the correct questions. And for the end, try to stay open and try to stay adaptive, because the next big thing is about to be released approximately tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention.
Super, thanks Marius.